Recording in progress.
Good afternoon, everybody. It's my pleasure to welcome you here for the capital budget meeting, which I'm not going to say any more about. I will just pass it right over to Mark.
Item 2, disclosure.
Oh, sorry, I have to call the meeting to order, right? Okay, I'll call this meeting to order. Yep, then I'll pass it over.
Sorry.
Do I have to have a
through
vote?
Through you, we do have to do the resolution
Oh, beg your pardon. I should know
and
this.
asking concerning pecuniary interest.
Right. Okay, so I'm going to call if anybody has any pecuniary interest to declare such at this time. Seeing none. And then a resolution moving council into the committee of the whole to consider the 2023 capital budget, which was moved by Councillor Dirksen, seconded by Councillor Elliott. All those in favor? And that's passed. And now I'll pass it on over to Mark. I just want to get rid of it in a hurry. Yes.
Good afternoon. It is my pleasure to kick off day 2 of the Town of Minto's 2023 budget deliberations. Today's focus will be on the 2023 capital budget request. And as a reminder, a budget open house is scheduled for March 7th, with the final budget bylaw coming before council on March 21st. The Town of Minto has made significant investments in its annual capital program. Through the use of reserves, strategic borrowing, and funding from other levels of government, the town strives to keep its assets in a state of good repair. Unfortunately, the annual capital requests from departments exceeds the funding available, resulting in some projects being deferred to future years. There is a balance between maintaining healthy reserves and the funding of asset repair and replacement. The town relies on annual funding in the form of federal gas tax and the Ontario Community Infrastructure Fund to fund a large portion of the annual capital program. However, a funding gap still exists. This problem is not unique to Minto, and staff will continue to explore all grant opportunities available to help mitigate the increasing capital project backlog. Minto has some very large projects on the horizon, and therefore staff is not recommending any new borrowing for a few years. The 2023 capital budget invests in various key areas of the community, building a strong foundation for the future. I will now turn things over to Treasurer Duff.
Thanks, Mark. Yes, I think Mark set the stage very well, and no surprises to anyone here that our list of worthwhile projects is much bigger than our sources of funding. You can see, though, we have done quite a bit in the past year. We're sitting in one of them. While we were shut down for COVID, we did take advantage of doing some much needed renovations in this room. And I think we can see one of the lasting changes of COVID is more virtual interaction. And so we've upgraded our audio and visual. And I know Matt and the crew are still working on doing the last mile, as we say, but I think it's much better. We brought in an online recreation booking platform, which has proven to be very popular because a bit less work in terms of taking bookings. We purchased a fire tanker, which we're always needing to do on our truck replacement plan. Happily, White's Road is virtually done. I think there's another top coat, but that went very well considering we have long-term care facility and a hospital, and the construction crew was able to keep access to them open through the period. We've done a lot of paving in all parts of Minto. I've got another pedestrian crossover, and I think one of our largest project was a sewer plant clarifier. Mark Robertson has been heading up, and it's virtually complete, just final approvals. We've added cemetery columbariums in both Harrison and Palmerston, currently existing in Clifford. and the Palmerston Arena getting a much-needed expansion, and dressing rooms and meeting rooms and ball fields. And that project is about 95% complete. And in Clifford Celebration Square, again, a couple of grants that we received, and we're able to book an all-season public space, and good for outdoor gatherings, and yeah, certainly very visible right in the heart of it. So that's done well. So now on to the next year. This is a very pared down budget, and even with pared down, it's a 4.1 million, which is not a small sum, but as we said in our preliminary, if we were following the asset management plan and we had the resources, it should be about 11 million. Our infrastructure deficit is growing, not shrinking, and again, that's not unique to Minto. And we'll get into the details there, but what we're spending on. And we basically funding through reserves and grants, development charge reserves. And again, as you know, development charges can only go for projects related to growth. So that's 350,000 and just under 1. Tax-based reserves. Non-tax-based basically means what? Viewers, so 600,000 there. And we have our grants at 1.8 million. And the next slide, it's not a long list. It's basically federal gas tax and our community investment fund. Did get a bump in the investment fund, but we have participated in a lot of the investing in community infrastructure programs. And in other years, we used to have connecting link grants and ones like that. And I know a lot of our counselors and some staff have attended a few government gatherings, and we haven't heard too many grand announcements. So anyway, we can hope. And in the meantime, we do spend a lot of work designing and getting ready for projects. So if something is announced, jump on it. And the next one, again, we're trying to keep our reserves and debt in line. Again, as you know, we have some very large projects, probably starting in 2 to 3 years, and we will have to bump up that debt. But right now, we're paying down 1.2 million in principal per year. And we're still below levels that we were at in 2008 and 2009. There were a lot of grants in order to cover our shares. So keeping a long-term perspective in that. Then we have a bit more detail on reserves. So they're going to come down about $1 million this year to fund part of the project that we have. We'll try and keep them up best we can, but you cut contributing to reserves, then that gives you less. And some of the highlights by department, and we have all the department heads here, so if you have any questions, they have to address them. Admin, basically, it's computers. So again, we know cybersecurity is a challenging issue, especially in the municipal sector. And we're trying to enhance our firewalls, which is basically trying to build the defenses to the network so that all the hacks and other attacks are blocked before they make it. And that's going to be this facility or wherever else. And I think cybersecurity is just going to be an ongoing project these days. And as we really emphasized in our operating meeting, it's a year of planning. So we want to take a step back, look at what we're doing, why we're doing it. Is it meeting what the public expects of us, and allocate our resources accordingly. So we're hoping that whole process will begin in the spring. Community services, we have upgrades at Palmerston and Palmerston community centers, and a new vehicle. Okay, and economic development, we've rolled a lot of the paving projects into the roads. So as you know, the Palmerston Industrial Park is getting a bit more built out, and the existing roadway from Main Street north is pretty beat up, and that's something that we promise a lot. Left that in the budget, and a little bit of more public art installation. Other than that, nothing too much in economic development. Fire, again, a couple of, I would say, mandated expenditures. I think as Chief Harrow has explained previously, there's a move towards standardization throughout the county for the self-breathing apparatus. And I know we used to replace a bit piecemeal, but that approach really doesn't work. You don't want two different standards in place. Biting the bullet and replacement 3, and also a bit more standardization. The radio system, and this will help our Public Works Department as well. Again, it's kind of a wholesale replacement. Those 2 items cover most of the fire requests. All things, but yep. Public Works, many paving projects. We have some maps that we'll get to today. And sidewalk, Site Lane, again, that's an item that's been for several years. Mike is looking at more innovative replacements, so we kind of have our best guess at the cost. Hope to get that off the books. I think you were saying it's a fairly quick construction process, like, yes, if it goes well. And detouring hopefully kept to a minimum. For wastewater, we're doing some upgrades at the Harrison pumping station, and we have a few $100,000 of various sewer main replacements, and basically Mark and his staff look at most urgent need, relining in Clifford, or Mark said a lot of our work has been development driven, so we have to provide the sanitary, storm, and the water connections when there is housing development going in. And kind of mirror image on water from that aspect, but we also have one of our ICIP Green Stream grants, which is providing some more redundancy at the mines, and the tenders are all complete, and work will start in the spring, we hope.
Sorry, through you, Deputy Mayor. Gord, just if you can move the microphone just a little bit closer to you. I'm just hearing that it's a little harder to hear you. Thank you.
Yeah, so at basically the Minto Pines well, we're also exploring well sites in Harrison and in Palmerston. Again, they've had quite a few meetings, not too much field work yet, but that work will go ahead. Hopefully we will get a site that provides quality and quantity, and then we'll be much better able to forecast the actual cost of it. There. Then we have the various maps, and they're color coded. So the red is pink, so it's what we've already done. The black highlights what we're going to do now, and the gray is what's to be done. And I think Clifford is a good example of showing how many projects are development driven. As you can see, it's more expanding the network and responding to possible projects that are on the go. Okay. chip in if you if you want anything there. Harrison, same thing. We've done a lot, not just in the downtowns, since 2012. Most of the future work, again, if you look at expanding King and Queen, that's more for future development, as well as at the north end and at the south end with the max development. Again, we've penciled in connecting link. We'll be looking for some funding on that too. Other future development. Palmerston, well, we have some paving, especially around the community center, that's going to go through this year. We have several housing developments that will require some upgrading of the existing road network. Of course, the biggest thing, and we keep saying this, is tentatively for 2025, the whole redevelopment of downtown Palmerston. And even though it's a county road, we still have to pay for all the water and sanitary and streetscapes and sidewalks and street lighting and all of that. And that's a long stretch of road. So we'll have to provide for that in our borrowing plans, because this estimate of 8 million, that's based on what could be. Hope it's lower, could be higher though. So that. In the township, again, we've done a lot of work. Finally got the 12th line all complete. I know that was a project. And Mike's got it sketched out by color as to what year we hope these improvements. We know this kind of winter we've had is pretty rough on the roads, to put it mildly, and address things as they need. The Minto Normanby town line, already done some work, and we hope to finish it off in 24 and 25. And of course, get Site Lane finished current year. So there's a bit of a crystal ball, but just for the next 4 years, kind of the term of council. Again, by far the predominant project is downtown Palm. That's what we've got in 2025. Everything else is basically relatively constant, but as you say, we struggled to finance a $4 million project this year, and looking ahead, the needs are a lot higher. Anyway, we keep pitching that to our funding levels, and it's very true, because we can only put so much onto our taxpayers. And those are the highlights. Again, it's not a very extensive list of projects this year compared to what we have been doing, but we think it's responsible and addresses some of the main priorities. Happy to entertain any discussion or questions.
Councillor Dirksen?
Thank you. I was just wondering about the strategic plan. I saw it in the list for 75 grand. I can't just, I don't know where it is now, but, oh, there it is, under administration.
That's right.
So are we doing that mostly in-house, or are we having somebody
Primarily,
help
I
us
think
out?
we will have to go outside for some facilitators. So when we say strategic plan, it is the strategic plan. It's also the recreation master plan, the cultural plan,
Oh, I see, okay.
fire plan. So we wrapped everything kind of into one. If you recall, when we first did the strategic plan, we had a lot of community focus groups. But with everything, I think we're going to try and combine them. So we may have like fewer meetings, but we'll have surveys, because otherwise we'll be going to our citizens every month with a different set of questions. So I think we'll do as much as we can in-house, but we do want to get more professional facilitation.
Okay, thank you.
To answer that further, just Councillor Dirksen, what we're talking about preliminary, Mark and I, is it's more of a person to guide the surveys, get all that information, help us do the data gathering, which takes a lot of time. And then staff kind of lead the redevelopment of a lot of the plans itself. But we kind of need someone to help coordinate this because there's 5-6 different plans that we want to upgrade this year, which is a huge undertaking. So it's kind of like adding a consultant / another staff member to help us gather all the stuff and guide the process through. So, but like we've traditionally done, our goal is to do a lot of it in-house because all our plans before have been a made in Minto type plan, and that's what our goal is with this one as well. Not a cookie cutter plan.
Yeah, okay, I actually thought it was just a strategic plan, and I thought that was pretty hefty price tag, but when you pull all those other things in, then that makes a lot of sense. Thanks.
Other questions? So I have a couple of questions, and maybe it's just mine. I look at all of these figures and cognizant of Bill 123, and you're kind of wondering, so if it messes around with our development charges, and we're looking at new water systems in 2 towns, and miles and miles and miles of road to get people back and forth, what is our realistic outcome or thoughts on how that, like if the other levels of government don't step up, what do we do? Just in a nutshell.
So,
Who wants to take that on?
I'm anticipating that the amount of DCs that we'll collect will go down. I don't think it's a great idea to open up our DC bylaw to address all this future infrastructure. I think majority of it's already still there. The reason is if we open up the DC bylaw to increase our fees, there's actually the phase-in provisions that Ashley didn't go into a whole lot of detail. But basically, when you get a new bylaw in place, the fees that you charge for the first year are only 80% of what your total amount would be after 5 years. So every 5 years, or sorry, every year it increases by 5% until it hits the 100%. So an example, Wellington North, they did open up their bylaw last year. The new fee rate identified, I want to say for a new house, was about 17,000 is what it is to replace or maintain their infrastructure, replace it due to development. They had to start charging back at 15,000. So it was actually a lower level than what their preceding bylaw had. So that's the thing with opening it up to encapsulate anything that we don't already have included in the study is a dangerous weapon.
Oh, and I wasn't suggesting that
no.
in any way, shape, or form. I'm just, you sort of look at this, and I mean, every community is facing the same issue. We want to grow. Mr. Ford tells us we're going to grow. We're going to build houses. But where is the money going to come from? How are we going to support the infrastructure for these communities that are growing consistently between water, sewer, hospitals? How are we going to manage hospitals and healthcare? And
I think the message that we need to send, and it's been sent to, I know it's been talked about at Roma and different conferences, is we, as former Mayor Bridge used to say, have 70% of the infrastructure and we get, however much of the tax dollars. It's not a good formula. So you can see on there, and this is a good thing that we wanted to bring up, was we've pushed a lot of projects forward and forward and forward by coming in at over $4 million capital. Like there's been a lot of stuff. Todd's talked about lots of times how we're running out of water and we need to look at that for the future, how we can get more water and looking at more wells. We need to upgrade wastewater plants. So the message we keep delivering the province, and the message that we can ask you as council to keep sending every time you get a chance to talk to the province and the feds, is we need money. We need grants. You saw our grant slide where there's 2 on there. There's no opportunities right now, and they say they're coming, and the optimistic staff that we have here, we're all saying they're coming, we know. But I think one of the things that staff has really pushed there is this is a planning year, and not only planning for strategic plan on that, but we want to get a bunch of projects to the line where they're shovel ready.
Right.
So that when the grants come forward, we can say, like we have done in the past, we've been very successful. We have this one and we are honestly shovel ready for them. So that's what the planning is. So it's not a bad thing that we're kind of doing a planning this year and kind of just taking a step back and looking, but our goal is to have projects 1 through 5 ready, shovel ready to go, that if they do send the grants, we're ready to jump and get them and that stuff too. So you'll see that come forward this year too, that we're planning for whatever we need to get ready for it. But the message we need to carry on is we need grants. We need money to help pay for this stuff because we can't do that on our own.
Absolutely. So then when I'm looking at our future plans and the years ahead, do we have a contingency plan, sort of if the funding gets tighter, what are the priorities out of those planned projects that we have? Because we all know that everybody thinks their road is the priority. But what are the true priorities that are going to impact transportation or safe access to the hospital? White's Road helps with that, but do we have that? Have we thought about that? Or I'm sure we've thought about it,
Yeah.
but
I think, as we've indicated, the redevelopment of downtown Palmerston is probably going to be the biggest project. And again, the county's our partner on that, because that will have such an impact. And as you recall, that was in the project originally for 21, 22 and got deferred. I don't think it can be deferred because Palmerston's a very busy town these days too. And I think the well exploration that we're working on, if we want to build houses, we have to have water for them. So I think those kind of raise it up. And the other, like, the town has been the banker, whether it's industrial park or other than that, we can't afford to do that. So maybe if developers are coming to the table, let's say, well, that's great, but we need to put in these services and we can't front the money. You know, you're
Right.
going to have to contribute a bit more too. So, but as Steve Harrow says, like, that's our message to our funders. It's like, yeah, we can't, we logically, we can't spend money we don't have. So these projects are just going to be deferred.
well, and that's what I'm looking at. Like, I look at it and I'm going, if development charges are being hampered and we can't go to the developers and say, you know, we have to increase the cost, and they just say, well, we'll wait 30 days and wait 90 days and you didn't approve it. So the government will, and we'll just go ahead. But so we just talk nice to Mr. Ford and the powers that be until we get some funding from them.
So, or yeah, just, it's a message that it's not just Minto and
Oh,
yeah,
I'm
you know,
sure
like,
not.
we just got to keep hammering it at every opportunity and get a few times a year. And, you know, like, whatever happened to, what was it, maybe 5 or 6 years at AMO, there was that 1%, you know,
Right.
getting
Oh,
the
yes.
HST. I don't even hear that anymore.
Okay.
But that would be a source, like, I mean, you do.
Well, and
look
there
at-
was talk of increasing it to 2%, wasn't there? But that certainly never
Yeah.
materialized. Yeah.
There was talk of making the gas tax, like, it doubled a couple of times, but making that permanent. But now we've gone back to the other level, and yeah, so
All right.
It's
So I
gotta be
guess we're
something
just in
else
line.
besides.
We're in line with our hands out like everybody else.
I'm afraid so.
Okay. Thank you. Any other questions?
Right
Yes,
down here. I
Counselor
said I
Elliott.
wouldn't ask any questions, but this is more of a comment. I belong to that OSM committee, and several of our meetings, especially the last couple, we've invited Minister Clark to our meetings to discuss that. It's all municipalities across, we're all in the same boat. I think they're feeling the pressure because he's conveniently not available for our meetings. They're finding that with, we also are affiliated with AMO. They're also finding that at AMO that they can't corner down the proper people, the proper ministers to talk to. I'm wondering if the pressure we continue to put on through OSM, through AMO, through our individual municipalities, that they may fold and give us some of that back. I'm hoping so. So I continue to pressure them.
Mhm. Yeah, I don't know what else you can do, but, okay. Is that it?
I believe that
We will
Gord
move
has
to
a little more to report on for the funding sources.
move on then.
That was the other. Oh, yes, on the detailed of the reserves and that too. So that's got a bit more detail on each project. So as I said, in administration, it's firewalls and replacing computers and the strategic planning of it. Terry is certainly not accounting for much of this increase. We have work on MCR. I think that's another term for urban boundaries and exactly, yeah. And then at the community services, it's the places primarily at the arenas, and a little bit of vehicles, the master plan, which we have, and we were all set to go in 2020. COVID came along. Again, economic and culture plan, trying to see if we have the right mix of services and attractions and that. The 25,000 to reserve, that hasn't changed. I'll be in there for many more years. That's financing the Ann Street loan for the development in Clifford. Fire again. Breathing apparatus and the radio. Okay, it. Public Works, it's site lane, paving, doing the equipment. I know there's capital graders and things like that we keep putting on, but you've been whatever, making do with what we've got for quite a while. Wastewater, it's the pumping station upgrade that we referred to. You're doing a lot of assimilative capacity studies, which again gives us better information to make the decisions and what we should be prioritizing. And inflow and infiltration, again, we've worked for a long time on that. I think we've made a lot of progress, but keep picking away at it. SCADA, which is basically a computer system for water and wastewater. And, we're looking at upgrading the equipment as we can and using the existing equipment as we're able to. The well exploration, again, I think those are the top priorities. Water. And in the previous budget, we approved the Minto Pines development. So that will be going well. And that's just kind of looking ahead. In admin, it's pretty constant. It's basically working away at cybersecurity and building maintenance. Building nothing other than replacing vehicles. And we've upgraded a lot of the community services priorities. Will hopefully our update of our master plan. Looking at that, I think our trails are being enhanced recently. A lot of work on the Ann Street and Clifford Trail. Economic development, we're pretty much at the end of selling our easily serviceable lots. We certainly encourage the private sector to take the lead in that now. And the other projects are relatively cheap to maintain. And fire, I think once we get the self-contained breathing apparatus and the radios, we're more into the vehicles as the big ticket items going forward. Public Works, again, around a lot of the developments. So like in Clifford, there's the Park Street. That road took a lot of abuse during the downtown redevelopment, so it needs to be done. West side and to Minto. Connecting lakes, again, in Harrison at the north end. We'll know better once we know exactly what the development proposals are. Palmerston, again, downtown, that's the big one. Queen Street South, which we did put in for a grant a few years ago, more to do with health and safety things, but they weren't deemed as critical enough. But if that section of town needs to go forward, we'll have to do a bit more work there. Again, in the rural areas, it's Minto Normanby, Sype Lane in general, and constantly like sidewalks and catch basins and mostly paving. Just has to be done. And wastewater, again, it's replacing pipes, extending services, large pump station upgrade in Harrison, and that will help retain our capacity. Sludge removal, as you may recall, quite a few years ago, that was a very expensive project, and we don't want that to recur. So I know Mark is working away at kind of doing more regular maintenance before it becomes a gigantic project. Again, in Palmerston, we have the service part of the Main Street development. And Henry Lane, that's basically completing that development. And back trailer, which gets a lot of use, will eventually need to be replaced. And more sewer mains. Again, Queen Street, Clifford West development. Seems the water towers constantly need painting, maintenance, and it does seem like a lot of money, but this is done to avoid spending even more money if you defer the maintenance on them. In Harrison, again, it's King Street North and Queen Street North, and looking at that water tower. Palmerston, servicing the Main Street development, and again, we know there's a lot of subdivisions in place there, so oversizing and sure that they're serviced. Finishing off the Minto Pines, anything that was budgeted in previous years, the regular vehicle replacements, and again, so the water main and the wastewater main, that was identified in the wastewater plan, where we said, well, we always put a set amount. We don't know maybe where it is, but whatever the priorities are, but so we've got it accounted for, and so those are the kind of short list of the projects and that too. And well, you know, like Terry made a very good point. Like I know when we were realizing the rate of inflation in September and October, we were thinking of examining our DC bylaw, but it's a poison pill right now.
Right.
You could do a lot of work and spend a lot of time and money and end up collecting less. So
Right.
we're going to keep it as is, and a couple of years before. May have to look at water and wastewater sooner too.
Mhm. Any questions? So I just have one question, and I'm not sure if it's in that page. I can't really read that page. Public Works in 2025, it's a hefty increase. What particular project is that for? Do we know, or?
That's Main Street.
Sorry?
Main Street.
Oh, okay, that's the Palmerston project. Okay, that's what, all right. I sort of wondered that, but I thought, ooh, there's a big jump. Okay. Any further questions? No? Yep, sorry?
So, a
Councillor
question
Victor?
for Matt, probably. Community service, I see a line there about Harrison and Palmerston R&R. What exactly is R&R?
Yeah, thanks for the question. So that's basically just any repairs and maintenance that we need to make to existing capital that's in place. So for an example, that could be an air conditioner or a furnace or refrigeration equipment, ice resurfacer, things like that. It's consolidated to that
Okay.
description.
Is the furnace replacement for the community center here in Harrison in this?
Yeah, so the HVAC for the auditorium at the Harrison Arena is scheduled to be replaced this year in this budget.
question.
Yes.
For water, I saw well exploration for Harrison this year, for $100,000, but only 50 in Palmerston. Water less expensive in Palmerston?
No, we're trying to run both of them at the same time, but Palmerston's need isn't as great as Harrison's, so Harrison, we're gonna have to get further down the path with Harrison quicker, because we're gonna run out of water quicker, so that's why.
I was
Yeah,
just curious.
yeah.
Thank you.
Any other questions? No, then I have a motion by Counselor Gunson and seconded by Counselor Zimmerman to return to regular council. All those in favor? None opposed? That's passed. And then notices of motion? Seeing none? And we have no bylaws. So Counselor Zimmerman and Counselor Dirksen have made a movement for adjournment. All those in favor? And the council of the town of Minto will adjourn to meet again at the call of the mayor. Thanks, everybody.
I had 4 minutes